Hello, this is Scott Jentz. Welcome to Sandbox Stories. Hello, welcome to Sandbox Stories. This is an interview with Dr. Jim Wachter. Dr. Wachter, welcome to Sandbox Stories.
Thanks, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We were classmates at ICO, 91 graduation year. I remember you being a St. Louis guy. You were a Blues fan, if I remember. You still a hockey fan?
Oh, yeah. Still a hockey fan. Finally got the Holy Grail last year before last, so finally won the cup. So it was a big thing for St. Louis, needless to say.
For a
50
lifetime
plus
fan,
years, I think.
That's everything.
Oh, yeah. No, it was fun, yeah. So how are things up in Wisconsin?
Good. We don't have our NHL team anytime soon, but we've got the Packers, and that matters. So hopefully by the time this thing's published, the Packers will have another trophy, but we'll see. Hey, what got you interested in optometry? Like what or who?
It's a good question. I get, like we all do, we get asked that. I think when I was in undergrad, I was pre-med, like most optometry students probably were. And I kind of looked at other options. I wasn't sure if that was the direction I wanted to go. I actually took a pause and looked going into law school. I went over to the law school and talked to some folks over there. Just kind of reset, figuring out what I wanted to do. Optometry popped up, and I started looking into that. And it just seemed to fit well with what my goals were, and applied to a few schools and ended up at ICO.
So it wasn't like you had some OD that had been, correcting your -5 since you were a kid. You literally like balanced professions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know that I even had an eye exam prior to that because I'm basically ametropic until about 6-8 years ago. But yeah, so it was nothing like that. No mentor, no eye doctor that I used to see, anything like that. So
that's super
interesting story.
So I've interviewed a ton of ODs for Sandbox Stories, and it seems like there's a pretty high percentage of those that I've talked to that have done a residency, as did you. Was that a good decision in hindsight?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend that to anybody. I think that was a year well spent. You go through school and you're building up debt, and you want to get out and start earning a living and start paying off your debt. But that year, as you know, most residents don't really make much of an income. But from an educational standpoint, it really made a solid impact on me, my career. I don't know that I'd be where I am if I didn't do that residency, because it opened some doors for me and gave me the opportunity that I had. So, and plus, it just gets you, you see just about everything and anything in a VA medical residency like that. So there wasn't really anything that was, by the time you got out of it, you weren't really surprised with just about anything that came through your door.
Do you think of the residencies as maybe a new norm in the profession, or maybe should it someday be an expectation?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you want to go into the full scope medical model and practice that way, it's I don't know that it's a requirement, but I think it really it gives you an edge coming out of school. That 1 year of intense training is there's a lot of things that we see in private practice, but when you're in that setting like that, you're seeing stage 3, stage 4 of various diseases that you typically don't see out in the private setting. For a variety of reasons, but at least it kind of level sets you a little bit and gets you used to what you need to do from a practitioner standpoint.
That's great. So we're going to talk about optometry plenty. Is there any really interesting story about a parent or a sibling or any of your kids that are occupying your life right now?
I mean, the kids have been home since right before Thanksgiving. We got 2 college age. The oldest is she's done. She's out in the real world now. But we've got 21-year-old twins, and they've been home since November, second week in November, and they go back Saturday. So they're anxious to get back. They're hopeful too that they can get back to some normal semblancy of college life, and hopefully start to get over the hump here in this semester, and hopefully by the fall, things will be somewhat normal again.
Yeah. So when you got out of your residency, how did you get into private practice? What was that like? Did you know somebody or did you do a search?
It was we were up in Chicago. And I was planning on going back to St. Louis, and there was a group out in Colorado, in Denver, actually, called John Gay and Associates, that was a practice consulting group, and they actually came to ICO. And they met with one of the guys and sat down, where are you from, and told him St. Louis, and he goes, oh, we just were out in St. Louis working with a doctor, Dr. Larry Jailey, and he and his wife went out Louis, out in West St. Louis County, great practice, et cetera, et cetera. I picked up the phone, I think about a day later, called Larry, set up a lunch right around Christmas time when I was home, and good lunch. We had a great talk. We hit it off, and he called me back about 2 weeks later and offered me a job when I got out of my residency. So,
Wow.
Anyway, it was pretty interesting how it all kind of came together.
Do you give him credit for being a forward thinker at that point in time? Because we see practice transitions sometimes be a little more difficult than that. Was that somebody who was being a forward thinker, or did your opportunity just kind of fall in his lap?
No, no. I mean, Larry was very, very entrepreneurial, very forward thinking. So it was really kind of fun, because it was an aspect of our optometry business that we weren't taught in school. So you don't get that entrepreneurial education, that business education, like so many folks did. But he really just had a knack for that, and just really wanted to see the business grow and expand. And so it was fun to just be a sponge and learn as much as I could from him.
Now, you guys grew that practice, and then it becomes part of a bigger story and what your role is today. How did you grow it?
Mostly by just de novo. So we just identified locations throughout the St. Louis market, and would find an area that was poised for growth or in the middle of growth, and we'd see an opportunity, and we'd find a spot, we'd build it out, and hire a doc, and away we went. So it was a very orchestrated the methodology of how we did it was well thought out, and we were fortunate enough to be successful in that practice plan.
So tell me about what your title is today and what your company is doing today.
So our initial company, Clarkson EyeCare in St. Louis, was purchased by private equity back in what was it, March of 2015, by a group out of California called FFL Partners, and they wanted to use us as a platform to expand and grow the full scope medical model outside of St. Louis and other geographies, and build a model. And so we did. We developed our own software back in the early 2000s on the patient management side. We coupled that with our EMR in around 2010, 2011, and that was one of the things that I think really attracted them to our group, because we had this optometry piece with the software. We had all kinds of data, and it was something that they looked at and said, well, this is something we could build off of. And we also were vertically integrated with an ophthalmology group in St. Louis, ophthalmology consultants led by Dr. Joe Gira. So we had Joe's practice coming into several of our locations. Their docs would come in a couple days a month and do some harvest some procedural care in the offices, as well as we would refer cataract secondary procedural care to them. We did the same with retina as well. So I think that model that we had started to develop was attractive to them, and so we've morphed now into 18 states. We've got about 420 optometric locations, and then about probably close to 100 ophthalmology partners as well.
Congrats. And your specific role is what?
My chief professional officer is my title.
Do you end up working with the docs more often than not? Is that?
Yeah. So it's working with the docs. I do a lot on the M&A side as well. As we continue to grow, it's great to get out and meet prospective docs that are looking to partner with us, and just tell the story, and what we can do and what we offer those guys.
Well, I mean, obviously, this institutional investor has helped you grow the business in a big way. What have you learned about the business expectations of such investors?
It is interesting, and it's like drinking through a fire hose over the past 3 or 4 years because I think if somebody mentioned private equity to us 8, 10 years ago, you kind of scratch your head and wonder hey, what does that mean and how does that fit with our world? But the private equity folks, no matter what kind of business they're looking at, they want to help grow the business both intrinsically in what you've got today. They want to grow that piece, and they want to expand and build and grow on that side of the equation as well. But the gist is they want to help any business that they invest in grow the bottom line and grow the top line and grow the bottom line. And if it's driving more patients into the office, expanding procedural care, more offerings for the patients as far as care, whatever it may be. So that's the driving force behind it.
I talked a lot.
Here
I talked to a lot of ODs about not trying to cut expenses to grow, that they have to invest to grow. I'm guessing that there's probably great cost controls in an institution like yours, but it is about investing in, as you said, adding patients and whatnot. Do you have real sharp razor edge cost controls, or when somebody comes into your network, does it feel like we're just we're centralizing frames, or you're choosing contact lenses from a common supplier? Is it sort of straightforward cost management?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a razor edge, cost control. I think it's responsible. I think that's the right word to use. But we've got with the number of practices that we've had, we've got some good buying power, needless to say, on our cost of goods with contact lenses and frames and lenses and things of that nature. So that's one of the things that we could bring to the table for a prospective practice. But no, we're looking to grow the practice. If docs want to expand into dry eye care or add equipment from a glaucoma perspective, whatever it may be, we're looking to help grow that practice and expand the scope of practice for docs that we bring into the fold.
You talked about EHR being a big piece of infrastructure, and actually having a consistent platform helped when you got started with your investment firm. Is there another key infrastructure thing that happens to work for a large network of practices that is applicable to the single doc that you could share with the group?
It's hard to say. I mean, we kind of cut our teeth on this software, and for us, it was just who we were. We developed a call center at some point, probably in the early 2000s too, and that was really a game changer too, because as a practitioner, you're in your office and you know your staff, and when a patient calls, you know how your front desk is going to handle it. So there was some angst, needless to say, when this concept, we started talking about this concept. But the beauty of it is once that call center understands, how to answer the phones and how to take the calls and refer the right patients to the practice that need to be referred that day. It takes so much pressure off the office. And so, when I'm coming out with a patient and I've got to hand it off to an optician or a technician for, secondary testing or pair of glasses or contact lenses, wherever it may be, there's always somebody there. Whereas in the past, when we, didn't have the call center, you come out and you got two on the phone up front, two patients standing to check in. Everybody's busy out there. I've got my rooms are full in the back, and we're trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this patient because everybody's busy. And so, we guesstimate that it probably takes about 75% of the calls off of the offices, and they handle those at the call center. So it really does help. It takes some of the pressure off the offices, and then we can focus more on patient care and helping those patients that are actually in our office.
And you've set up a system, I'm sure, with either a recruitment system or something else for staffing itself. When you buy a practice in Kansas City or wherever the case may be, you help that practice now develop its staffing, and you also probably have protocols of consistency of training.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because you buy a practice and docs are always afraid that their staff's all going to, what are you going to do with my staff? And, I sometimes jokingly say, well, we don't have a closet full of opticians ready to deploy in Kansas City. If you've got good staff, we want to keep your staff because, we're looking for great people all the time too. And so if you've got those folks, we want to keep, we want to maintain the staff that you got because frankly, that's what's made the practice as good as it is.
What is a key driver or metric that an independent business owner needs to be thinking about to have an opportunity to become part of what's going on with companies like yours in getting you being a candidate? Do you have key metrics that are just kind of standard?
No, I think one of the things that we want to make sure that the docs are practicing in a full scope manner. I mean, that's real important to us because that's how we developed our practice, and again, we vertically integrated with our ophthalmology partners. And if that's in place, that's the first big step. And we just want to make sure that they're practicing full scope optometry. And um, it's just that's kind of the first box that has to be checked.
Do you still see patients as a matter of demonstrating, that you're in it with the other docs, or is it just too much work for an optometrist who's at the, sort of at the pilot seat of a business like this to stay involved in patient care?
No, I still do. Not obviously as frequently as I used to, but I still enjoy it. I'll go in. Typically on Mondays is my day. It's not every Monday now, but when I can, it's try to get in at least a couple times a month and get a full day. Needless to say, but it's fun. I still enjoy it. It keeps me on the edge, and there's always challenges. There's always stuff going on, and but I think it's important from where I sit as well, just because I want to stay in the game, and it helps me stay in the game. It helps me with new technologies, new contact lenses that come out, so I'm able to keep my feet wet and all those things.
You and I have a common trait in that I also backed my business down when I couldn't handle it and was running another business, my clinical business. I backed down, and there may be a learning you got that I never learned, never understood, but there's a lot of patients that want to see Dr. Wachter. How do you manage that? There are people listening to this podcast who are saying, "Hey, I do that. All the patients want to see me, but I'm not there as much." Was there any magic you have that you can advise others on how to properly deflect those wants, those fans of yours to the other doctors?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, it still does. I mean, there's folks, that you've seen. I've been doing this almost 30 years, so you develop relationships. Needless to say, and you see the kids of the folks that you used to see, and now you see their kids now, and it just means we're all getting older too. But it's not easy because you can't see everybody because I'm not in there as much, and but I still, like I said, I still enjoy it. I'm fortunate enough to be some of my colleagues that work in the same office are fantastic docs, so when I'm not there, I know they're in great hands, and so that part of it, it's easier than you might think, just because we got some great, I got some great associates.
So, give me a little bit of a thought to the undertow of conversation. It's not loud, it's not big in our industry about the threat that consolidation of practices brings. That the doctors might not be as motivated to be parts of the associations, or they might not be willing to go to the Capitol for a legislative battle, or something like that. Could you defend the organizations like yours that do this, and say, how do you advise the doc, since you are the chief professional officer? I'm sure you motivate them to stay involved, but what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, we still stay very heavily involved politically. Some of our practices, we've got several former presidents of the AOA that are part of our group, and they're advocates for us. They're advocates for all of optometry, frankly. And so, and it's very important. And we're on calls weekly with our group. That's our advocacy group, with just discussing the latest FTC ruling with regard to the prescription release of contact lenses. And so we've been pushing real hard. You may be familiar with the Bozeman bill. It got stalled, but we've been helping push that along as well. We've had probably 2 dozen phone calls with congressmen, doctors within our practice, talking to the local congressmen about the Bozeman bill, educating them, and trying to gain support there too. So, from where we sit, it's obviously the political side of optometry is very important. It's not going away. There's always going to be the next something that's out there that, unfortunately, is going to try and push down what we do or critique what we do, especially with some of the big boxes trying to, kind of bully their way in sometimes. But it is what it is. But I think again, from where we sit, we find it very important.
Are you a great place for new or recent graduates to show up and have opportunities to work, or do you sense that that's not where they want to be? I'm not sure how they see it. Maybe you are closer to that than I am.
Yeah, no, we actually hired quite a few new graduates, and no, again, just like I mentioned, staff are always looking for great docs too. So if it's somebody that's been out and seasoned a little bit, that's been out a couple few years or more, that's great. But there's, at some point you and I came out of school and we needed to work somewhere, right? So, and I was fortunate enough to land in a good spot. So, we like to think we provide a good environment. We great staff, and we have all the tools and the toys to practice full scope optometry. So we like to think it's a nice place for them to land.
Last question on this topic. What do you think by the year 2025 or 2030, as the practices that are desirable by private equity are bought, what do you think the percentage of independent OD practices will be? Is it 80%? Is it 50%? Where is it going to land?
It's hard to say. Interestingly, one of my colleagues here, in his former life, he was an executive with a dental roll-up company, and he tells the story that they've been rolling up dental practices for almost 20 years now, and they've only done about 15 to 18% of the private practices. So if you compare, what we're doing, the optometry consolidation compared to the dental side, you might be at 75, 80%. It's hard to say. I think the last statistic I had seen was about 9% of optometry practices and about 6% of ophthalmology practices. That was maybe 6 months ago, so it maybe changed a little bit by now, but that was one of the recent statistics I've seen. So there's still a lot of independent providers that are still out there.
And just to clarify, that's 9% you said of optometry practices.
Yeah, it's in that ballpark, 8 or 9%. But again, it was 6 months ago, and things have maybe changed from
It
that.
seems to pass the sanity check. All right, let's talk about one other thing that I think you could be an expert on that I'm not sure I could get somebody else to explain as well as you could. Vertical integration is a phrase that's used a lot in optometry today, and it sounds like it's a great opportunity for a business owner to become part of a vertically integrated system. But of course, there are complexities to that because the independent doc that might be just out there on their own isn't necessarily going to understand what it means and how it works. Could you give an example of how you understand vertical integration to work?
Yeah, so if you look at our Clarkson piece back, 10, 15 years ago, is when we started to partner with our ophthalmology partners back in St. Louis. We were in separate ownerships, but we had that, we had a relationship with them where, like I said, they'd come into our offices. And we just wanted to make it kind of a one-stop shop for the patients and get that experience all within the Clarkson location. So you can come in for glasses, contacts, and if you've got a retinal issue, we've got retina doctors on staff. If you come in, you need your cataracts taken care of, we've got that. So it was that ease of referral. We co-manage with our partners. And again, it was easy for us to say, hey, this is our partner, and the patients didn't really have to go anywhere else if they didn't need to. So we don't have that in every market, but that's our goal, is where we've got a dense optometric network to find great ophthalmology partners and do the same. And nobody says this is who you have to refer to. But I think if in our world, if we provide a world-class surgeon who has great results, who speaks well to the patient, who communicates well, and then co-manages and gets the patient back to the doc and takes good care of them, I think at least give them a shot. I think they'll be happy. That's all we ask. And so we've been fortunate enough to partner with some great surgeons, and so the model's working, and we've expanded here, and even in the St. Louis market, it's expanded quite a bit.
How about on the product side? Do you provide that same kind of continuity of do you have such a relationship with optical labs that you can just drop ship the frame, or you don't even have to drop ship the frame? You got frame companies sending the frame in, so you have product integration as well.
Yeah. So again, there's no handcuffs on the docs. They can practice and fit from a contact lens perspective whatever they want to fit. We don't tell them what to fit or how to fit it. It's just we hope to be able to offer just about anything they want. And, you acquire a practice and they may be using a different scleral type lens than what we traditionally used, and that's okay. And so if it's an account we have not opened yet, we figure out a way to open the account so those docs can continue to practice in the way they practice. And so, but yeah, we try and just like everybody else, have a variety of frame options and lens options and things like that. And so it's giving patients choices, obviously.
One other thing about optometry, just from a practice of optometry perspective, in the 30 years we've been in practice, things have changed a good bit. But I talked to a doc this morning who graduated in the 60s who, didn't get taught a slit lamp in school. So it's changed a good
Well,
bit. Do you see anything really substantial coming down the line for us as ODs that maybe you have any insights on that the others don't? I'm guessing around, you know, dry eye therapies and other things, or maybe of anything that might be really inspiring to the group?
yeah, I mean, the dry eye therapies, there's obviously, 2, 3 years ago, there was one or two things, and now there's probably 8 or 10 different things that we could do for my foaming gland dysfunction, et cetera. So I think that's pretty innovative. To answer your question, no, I think the imaging technology obviously is improved tremendously. We grew up with just a central, I think it was a Polaroid when we were in
Right.
school. So that tells you how far we've come in that realm. So there's no magic wand or anything that I've heard, or anything like that coming down the pipe from an equipment standpoint. But I think everything that we're doing now is just getting better and better, from the nerve fiber analysis and like I said, retinal imaging, etc. So it's fun. There's no, needless to say, there's always something new and exciting, innovative
Any point,
coming down the pipe.
any points of view that you have about telehealth and what optometry is particularly suited to do through telehealth as opposed to what isn't necessarily suitable? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because through when we had to kind of unwind our practices through COVID for 6 to 8 weeks, we launched our kind of revamped our telehealth, and it was interesting, and we did maybe 50% or so of our encounters were that way because we were able to. But any type of vision loss, any flashes and floaters, any eye pain, things like that, those are live visits, and so if it's if allergic conjunctivitis, things that are relatively simple to diagnose via a telehealth call, that's fine. But as we came back to, we still offer telehealth, but as we came back online again, towards the end of May, the telehealth numbers just continued to drop because I think people in our profession, for whatever reason, want to come in and see the doc, and so we still do a handful of them each month, but it's not. The level of usage did not maintain the same level, and we thought it might, just with all that's going on in the pandemic, that people might not want to come into the office. But conversely, I think at that point people were looking for reasons to get out of their house because they
True.
could keep up so long. So, so anyway, I think it's always going to be around, but I think we're kind of a unique profession where there's, again, the three things I mentioned. If any of those things go on, you really need to see the patient. And so, there could be things with regard to diabetic screenings and things like that where, internists and/or retinologists can look at if there's an imaging technique that can be done telehealth wise to help screen for diabetes and even glaucoma and optic nerve evaluations, things like that. Maybe those things will tend to advance or start to advance, but it's probably going to be more of a slow moving train, would be my guess.
I'm really interested as to whether or not patient self imaging of anterior segment conditions would give both patient and doctor a chance to sort of triage some things. I mean, you think about the subconjunctival hemorrhages, and I don't want to underestimate the importance of people being seen in the chair, right? As you said, the patients want it.
Right.
The doctors also, most of the time, demand it, and for good reason. But it'll be interesting to see for some of the initial care, some of those minor issues, or for follow-on care for somebody who's treated for episcleritis or something. If there'll be a niche of patients that'll be able to be taken care of that way and save everybody some time and money, and let us stay connected to our patients. Well, I mean, I can't be prouder than I am that of somebody like you that came from our same cloth, that has led a charge for doctors that want to be in the type of practice scenario that you started with Clarkson with your partner, and it's just awesome. I guess the only thing I can ask, other than all these business questions, is there any great things that give you joy in your personal life?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the kids. My wife and I have 3 great kids, and we're gonna miss them when they go back to school. But I think my wife's ready to let them go back to school, if you know what I mean. So it's been fun having them around, but it's they need to go back and be kids and college kids and experience what college is supposed to be. So we're real proud of the kids for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, it's super nice to reconnect, and I can't be thankful enough for your openness and your insights on a topic where a lot of doctors don't get a chance to talk to somebody who's been doing what you're doing. So, continued success, and thank you for sharing all these thoughts.
Great, Scott. Great to see you.
And for the audience, thanks for attending and listening to Dr. Wachter's thoughts. And until my next Sandbox story, be great at all you do.